coach.
Yeah, sure. Just quickly, tactical periodization. You put up a post on our Instagram page the other day. Can you just go into a little bit more detail in terms of how you actually apply the concept in your setting with football?
Yeah, no, of course. So obviously tactical periodization, as we all know, is something that's not new. I think it's something that's kind of been brought back with some of the Portuguese coaches making their way into the Premier League, and it's kind of gained more popularity and more traction. And it's also obviously moved across codes into hockey, into rugby, so it's been quite interesting. I think the application thereof is obviously very varied. I don't think there's a right fit. I think it's a fit for your club and once again, what your club's perspective and, outcomes are. There's been a big debate on, the whole match day +1 scenario, whether it's active or passive. That's been something that's been quite a big talking point for us as a club in terms of managing our players going forward, because what necessarily works for PSG or for Real Madrid or for, these big clubs, is not going to work on a practical perspective for us as a smaller club.
Yeah, sure.
So we've kind of come into a model which fits us quite well this season. It might not be the same model next season as we look to expand and develop further, but essentially at the moment we've broken up our days into essentially our match day +1 being an active recovery or personal active recovery day or a family day or a travel day. Because we are based in Cape Town, we travel a lot up into Joburg, Pretoria, Bloemfontein, Durban, etc., etc. So most Sundays we are, on an airplane or on a bus. So for us to do another training session, a match day +1 session, it just isn't feasible. So on a match day +2, we'll go into what we call an installation day, which is more than our active recovery session with the squad, where we utilize, our bench players, our players that didn't travel, our players that didn't get minutes, to kind of catch up a little bit in terms of how much they've been exposed to. And then obviously allow the guys that have had majority of the playing time an active recovery process.
Okay.
And obviously also the installation.
Is that active recovery session on pitch for the guys that played, or is it more off-field stuff?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both. How it's been working, it's very individualized and specific to the guys that completed the 90 and which position they played in as well. I'm sure high-speed running is a very big marker of, delayed fatigue and the amount of, recovery required. So we kind of look at, who's played, how much minutes, what have been their physical outputs in relation to what the normal physical outputs are, and also just looking at the profile of the player. We've got a few players that are, quite old, 36, 33-year-olds, 34-year-olds, some guys that, because we are a developing club, we brought in players that might not have had opportunities at other clubs to come play for us. So we have to look at their training base and their training background as well. So for those players that require that extra day, it'll probably be off-field completely. For the younger guys that, are physically in a better position-wise, not as demanding, they'll have an on-field session for a limited period of time. Just to kind of get them going again, which will then be supplemented with, corrective work in the gym afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the reason why I asked is because one of the main principles behind tactical periodization is that mostly, like all the sessions are actually done on field, whether it's a recovery session, an activation session, and obviously just the intensity, size of the block, size of the pitch, duration of the drills is adapted. Cool.
Yeah, so
match
I think
day +3.
Match day +3. That's a Tuesday for us. Yeah. Okay. So normally it's a Tuesday. Match day +3 would be our what we call intensive day. So our smaller size kind of space playing, what we like to call actions or touches. Player density is quite low. We don't give them a lot of space to move into. So we kind of stressing more the technical side of things from the player. Once again, we know that, on a match day +3, it's still 72 hours, after the game, there's still some kind of, fatigue element present for a large majority of the players. So exposing them to big field areas, exposing them to a VMAX or a maximal sprint or high sprinting loads, it's probably not the best thing for their health at that moment in time. So we utilize, like I said, our small fields, our small sided games. We obviously, like most football teams, players love a rondo. So we're quite big on, starting sessions with rondos or utilizing rondos quite a bit in these intensive sessions. And and yeah, keeping the intensity fairly high, but keeping the total volume of play and the total duration of play a little bit lower. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the match day plus 4?
Yeah, so match day -3, which will be our extensive day, which is then pretty much the opposite of an intensive day. So duration in terms of the session is probably a little bit longer. You know, we go into more our big fields, our big opportunity to open up and to get more high speed running. It's our day that's most specific to football, if you want to call it that, from a physiological perspective. So, you know, more 9v9s, 10v10s, 11v11s, working on, you know, our principles of gameplay going forward towards the match. So then it's really about, you know, the sub principles we put in place the 2 days prior to that. How do we then implement it in a match like scenario on our big day? So by then you kind of want to identify more or less, you know, your like I said, your principles, your patterns of play that you want to implement in the game going forward. So yeah, big space, lots of running, get probably your most volume in terms of running done for the day on that day. Because then once again, you know, it's out of that 72-hour, you know, danger zone, and you allow yourself another 72 hours the other way, to ensure that you can taper appropriately for your match.
Sure. And how do you fit in your gym sessions?
At the moment, gym sessions, it depends. Number one, obviously, what's context. So I think you're looking at your turnaround time between matches. I think B, you're looking at where the games are being hosted. So like, once again, we travel a lot, so it depends on the length of your travel. So we have to look at our scheduling first. Everything revolves around our scheduling. And then from there, we can kind of implement best practice. You know, sometimes we have to go all the way up to Toyando, which is a 2 to 3 day trip almost just to get there. Which is still, you know, you might have a 7-day turnaround, of which 3 days of that 7-day turnaround is traveling. So it's very limited. But in an ideal world, in a best picture setting, we look to try implement 2 strength sessions a week with the players throughout the season. Off season, we might look to implement a little bit more, but in season, 2 strength sessions a week. And then what we have is we have 2 corrective sessions a week with the players, where we'll kind of identify through profiling shortcomings in the players, you know, needs, and then address those in a smaller group setting. So yeah, 2 strength sessions a week. You know, one is kind of primarily strength driven, and the other one is more, you know, where we are in our force velocity curve, you know, driven. So trying to make it a little bit more appropriate, a little bit more applicable to match day. And then we have a corrective in between.
Sure. And just talking off season, pre-season compared to in season, do you guys follow